All right. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to
Krishna, Govinda.
Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace Mahatma Prabhu, and all glories to the Samud Vaishnavi devotees. Devotees, we thank you all for being here, especially those who are not regular participants on this platform. We appreciate your association with us today. Today happens to be Monday, the first day of the busy week, and it also happens to be the last day of the month of March. So, by providence, we are so much blessed we have His grace with us today to help us begin the week and also end the month. So, Prabhuji, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and blessing us with your wisdom and association, as you oftentimes do. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here.
Okay. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvise Sasanyavadi Paschachita Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we'll try to chant responsively, but you can keep your microphones off. Otherwise, it won't work properly. Yata jale chandramasha kampadistad krito gunaha drishyate sanapi drashtur atmanonantamano gunaha yata jale chandramasha kampadistad krito gunaha drishyate sanapi drashtur atmanonatmano gunaha yata jale chandamasa kumpadis tat krito gunaha drishyate sanapi drashtur atmanonatmano gunaha. Anybody want to chant? Unmute and chant and reveal your expertise in Sanskrit. Anyone want to?
Jata jale chandramasa kampadistat krito guna Vishyate sannapidrashtur atmanunatmanu guna.
Any other brave soldiers?
यथा जले चन्द्रमासा काम्पादिस्तत्कृतो गुणा दृश्यते सन् अपि द्रष्टुर् आत्मनो नात्मनो गुणा
यथा जले चन्द्रमसा कम्पादिस्तत्कृतो गुणः दृश्यते सन्नपि द्रष्टुर् आत्मनो नात्मनो गुणः.
We're waiting for Sahadev.
Hare Krishna. Yatha jale chandramasaha kampatistat krito gunaha drishyate san api drashtu atmano natmano gunaha.
Okay, let's go to the word meanings. Jata, as. Jale, in the water. Chandramasaha, of the moon. Kampa adi, quivering, etc. Tatkrata, done by the water. Gunaha, quality. Drishyate, it is so seen. Asanapi, without existence. Drashtu, of the seer. Atmanaha, of the self. Anat manaha, of other than the self. Gunaha, quality. Translation. As the moon, reflected on water, appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. In other words, like if you see a reflection of the moon in water, because the water is moving, it looks like the moon is moving, or it's got wrinkles in it, or it's jiggling around, but the moon is not jiggling, it's the water that's jiggling. And so we appear to be matter. We're only seeing a reflection of who we are, but we're not matter. It just looks like it. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entities are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on the water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver, but because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering, although in actual fact, the moon is fixed. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appear to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries, although in the pure soul, such qualities are completely absent. The word pratyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of having one's head cut off in a dream, is significant here. I dreamt that my head was cut off. Well, how did the dream end if you didn't have a head? Like that. How could you? It appears your head was cut off, but you're still having the dream without a head. Yeah. So the reflection of the moon on the water is the separated rays of the moon and not the actual moon. The separated parts and parcels of the Lord entangled in the water of material existence have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all in touch with water. The light of the sun and the moon reflected on matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. The living symptoms are compared to the light of the sun and the moon, illuminating material manifestations like trees and mountains. The reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the pure monistic philosophy develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and the moon themselves, although they are always connected. The light of the moon spread throughout the sky appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet, as it is personal. And the living entities on the moon planet are also personal. In the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears to be more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness. Although the light of the moon is the same everywhere, due to being differently appreciated, it appears different. Similarly, the light of the Lord is equally distributed everywhere. But due to being differently received, it appears to be different. One should not, therefore, accept the reflection of the moon on the water as actual and misunderstand the whole situation through monistic philosophy. The quivering quality of the moon is also variable. When the water is standing still, there is no quivering. A more settled condition so quivers less. But due to material connection, the quivering quality is more or less present everywhere. So it's like, it's not a pure reflection. It's, like we're reflected through the modes of nature. So that quivering, we can compare that to the modes of nature. And so consciousness is being reflected through the modes of nature. So we don't see things as they are. And that's why Krishna says in the Gita that according to the mode you're in, you will see things differently. You'll see it backwards. You'll see good as bad, bad as good, right is wrong, wrong is right. Because it's going through a, it's going through, filtering through our consciousness. This big picture of me on the screen. When I give class in the temple, I don't see a picture of me. When I give class on Zoom, I do. It's weird. I'd love to just blank it out, but if I blank it out, I think you can't see it either. So one of the interesting things, I don't know if you noticed in this verse, is that I wasn't expecting it, but kind of out of nowhere, it seemed out of nowhere, I didn't expect it. Prabhupada takes this analogy and he starts talking about impersonalism, that we are not God. So I don't know if you also thought like that when you saw, like, how did this relate to the previous point? It just seemed to just come out. And one of the things we see with Srila Prabhupada is wherever there's an opportunity, even if there isn't, he'll make one to bring up the impersonal idea, to talk about it and talk about what's wrong with it. So I found that interesting. Because the impersonal idea of God, it pollutes the very essence of the nature of the soul, which is a servant. So if I think I'm God, then I'm not a servant of God. I am God. I'm equal with God. So service, that's the nature, the essence of the soul. And that means that's the essence of spiritual life. So if I take that away, then there's not real spiritual life. It's not genuine. And of course, we know that as devotees, what we're doing is trying to awaken that loving spirit. But how can you awaken that loving spirit if you don't think you and God are different? So that's one angle of vision. It's a philosophical angle that Prabhupada sees, that the world, everyone needs to go back to Godhead. You're not going to go back to Godhead thinking that you are Krishna. And if you try, you'll get kicked out before you even get in. I'm God. Can I get in here to Vrindavan? I don't think so. Go back to the material world. That's where all the people who think they're God stay. This is not your neighborhood. You won't get in. So from the perspective of saving the fallen conditioned souls, Prabhupada is taking every opportunity to make this point that you're not God, because every other guru, practically speaking, outside of Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Sri Vaishnavism or the devotional movements, every other guru is saying you're God, which, it sounds good. I could be God. That sounds good, doesn't it? Better than, better than trying to be rich and famous, just become God. That's like way better. So, in the name of spirituality, it is attractive to the materialistic, exploitative, or some people say exploitative nature of the conditioned soul. So it actually feeds into it, which is why it's attractive. And, it's people are believing it's spiritual. On some level it is, because it recognizes that we're not the body. But beyond that, it feeds into the conditioned nature. So Prabhupada is here to get people back to Krishna. And if everyone becomes an impersonalist, that's not going to happen. So he takes every opportunity wherever he can to point that out, because that misunderstanding is pervasive. So he needs to point it out. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he needs to point it out, because people don't know. And if you listen to any of Prabhupada's disciples, many of them will say that when Prabhupada explained that we're not God, but we're part and parcel, it's just like cleared everything up, because they had come in to hear Prabhupada thinking they were God, thinking it was one, and Prabhupada cleared that up, and it was like, oh, the sun rose and the fog's gone. Because that idea doesn't do much for you. Okay, I went to a class and found out I'm God, and now I'm going to the dentist to get my tooth pulled. So, like that class didn't really prevent the threefold miseries, I'm God, but still, yeah. I still have no money in the bank, and I have a toothache. And yeah, Hare Krishna. So it's not practical. And so seeing from Prabhupada's perspective and seeing from his compassion, Prabhupada really, think about it. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Impersonalism and Voidism Deshatarine. He has come to save the Western worlds. Well, now it's the whole world, but originally it was the Western world, from voidism and impersonalism. So Prabhupada saw that so much of the world is merged in voidism and impersonalism. And generally, the disciples will write these mantras for their guru, these pranam mantras. Aside from the generic Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, disciples will write. But what disciple in the early days had the capability to even know what to write or knew Sanskrit well enough to write it? So one devotee, knowing that gurus have numerous pranam mantras, like we know that, I'm just reciting the mantras of the gurus in disciplic succession, asked if we could have a pranam mantra, another one for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, yes, but he wrote that. Which is kind of, in a sense, unusual, but it's like Prabhupada saying, this is what I want to be known for. Or another way is, this is my mission. So what is Prabhupada's mission? It's in his pranam mantra. He's preaching the message of Gauravani, Lord Chaitanya, which means, what's that message? Prema, Braj Prema. Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine, delivering the Western world. Like, wow. So Prabhupada was very, his eyes were open. Wherever he saw impersonalism, he would attack it. And he knew it was everywhere. And he knew it was even in our hearts. And I think that's also why he was always talking about it. We may not think we're impersonalists, but yeah, there are impersonal tendencies in some of us. So that's one point. And the other point, and I've spoken about it before, not to the devotees in Nigeria, but elsewhere, that that in I don't know in Nigeria, but and I don't know anywhere in the world, but I know in America, if you want to offend somebody, and you will, and this is like common, especially if somebody's angry, you will say something about their mother. Your mother's a whatever, a prostitute. Your mother's a this or that. They do that in Nigeria. Same thing. You want to, or you're not as advanced as Americans in offending people. Yeah, we might be in first place. So you would say something. Your mother's a this. Your mother's a that. That's how you would offend them. And
Yes, yes. It's very common in Nigeria.
yeah, maybe it's universal. And so when someone does that, what's your next move? Punch him in the face, basically. You know? And if you're a woman, you can bite him, you know, or something. Yeah. Stick your nails in his arm or whatever. Scream at him. So it was like that for Prabhupada. When impersonalists would speak, then it was like someone just offended your mother. You can't just sit and watch that. You have to retaliate. And so there's a story which I told a few weeks ago where Prabhupada was invited to a program in India. And sometimes they would invite Prabhupada to a program and there would be other speakers. And often they would invite him for the prestige of the program because if Prabhupada came, it would add prestige to the program. And so Prabhupada spoke and then they let another sadhu speak. And the sadhu was speaking how we're not the body, we're spiritual beings, we're consciousness, and like that. Everything was good. And then he started speaking impersonal philosophy. I don't know how many people were in the audience, but you can imagine in India it was a large crowd. And after a few minutes, when he started his impersonal speaking, Prabhupada said, start kirtan. And it startled the devotees because, Prabhupada just gave his half-hour talk. And now it was this man's turn. And Prabhupada's, basically saying, interrupt his talk. Or basically saying, stop it. Anyway, devotees, following Prabhupada's order, they did kirtan. And, the man was like embarrassed or what's going on. I think the most embarrassed were the organizers of the program, obviously, right? So afterwards, Prabhupada said that when he was speaking general philosophy, it was okay. But at a certain point, he started speaking impersonal philosophy, and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't tolerate it, hearing that. So it's like your mother, you're listening to a lecture, and everything is nice, and all of a sudden the person's saying, and your mother's this, and your mother's that. What are you going to do? Stop him! Shut him up! You can't say that. So it's both a philosophical issue and a personal issue for Prabhupada, that his Lord, his friend, his lover is being criticized. And you might think, well, how is that criticizing? Well, what if I said, you and your mother are the same, and your mother has, uh, in her original pure state, your mother has no form, no face, no hands, So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, they want to chop off the limbs, the beautiful limbs of Govinda, they want to chop them off. They want to say he has, your mother, she has no brain, she has no this, no that. Yeah. So that's why Srila Prabhupada becomes so upset. Mayavadis and scientists. Scientists are also, Prabhupada said, greatest enemies of modern civilization, because they're proposing that the universe exists without a God. You can't go back to Godhead if you don't believe in God. So that philosophy would keep everyone in the material world pretty much forever. So if you have Mayavadis and atheists influencing society, which more and more they do, that pretty much perpetuates material entanglement. Who's going to go back to God? And you don't even believe in God, or you think you're God. Well, that's not going to work. So Prabhupada's mission is to get everyone back to Godhead, and therefore it upset him. And you can see in this purport, like out of nowhere, like where did that come from? Where did the moon's reflection in the water, which is reflecting consciousness through the modes of nature, then Prabhupada said, and Krishna is like the pure moon, and you're not Krishna. One time, Prabhupada was asked, what is Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada said, they were talking, they've been talking a lot of impersonal philosophy, and Prabhupada said, God is great. You are not great. Therefore, you are not God. Like if anybody asks you, that is an answer you could give. I don't know if that's the best answer in every situation, but in the context of the discussion on impersonalism, that was the answer Prabhupada gave. God is great. You are not great. Therefore, you are not God. You've probably noticed you're not God, right? It's kind of obvious. But still, people get bamboozled and they're preached that you're God, everything is one, you're one with everything. And since I'm one with everything, I'm going to merge in all the money in the universe and I'll become wealthy because there's no difference between me and the money, right? Isn't it? Like all the money, there's no difference between you and all the money. Well, there's no difference between you and all the women or men. You can have it all. So that's where it kind of ends up, at least for many people. Hare Krishna. So, since the Nigerian class tends to go on eternally with questions and comments, I will stop now to give us I can eat my lunch on time and do other things in a timely fashion. But that's basically what's in the purport.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Jai Prabhupada, Hare Krishna,
Yes.
Gauranga.
So much enlightenment. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, realizations you may want to ask or share, please indicate by using the hand emoji. They were having issues with our chat, but somehow Guru Krishna helped us. It's been resolved. So sometimes some people may want to.
Yeah, it looks like it's working fine.
If you want to do that, you may do that.
Everything is fine. So we have a question here.
Yeah, Govinda Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Thank you, Maharaj. Please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to you. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Jai Prabhupada. Haribol.
Maharaj, in your delivery, you made mention of the impersonalists not going to go about Godhead because they don't believe the personality of Godhead, that he has a form. Is it because they've not seen him? And most people have not seen the form of God. Some may believe that God must have a form, or God does exist, but they don't know him.
Yeah.
And so they don't know him. Isn't it the same as those who don't believe that God does not exist? Because both of them do not know him.
Yeah.
So if you take the Vaishnavas aside, there are many religious practitioners, for instance, like Christians and Muslims. They believe that there's a Father, there's God, there's a Supreme Being, but they do not know him. So if they happen to be in the presence of the Lord, how would they know that this is the Supreme God that I'm worshiping? And likewise, the impersonalists, they cannot go back to Krishna because they don't know that this is Krishna, and so therefore they are not going. Can you draw the line?
Well,
and yeah.
Well, I think the first problem is sometimes you present to them, here is God, and they say no. And they have no reason to say no, because if they say no, then we have to say, well, show me your picture. Because if this isn't God, you must have a picture of the God who is God. Of course, they don't. So that's one point that Prabhupada mentioned. If you are to say something is not God, you have to say that, you have to know what God is. But
Yeah.
I think more importantly, we know that if someone is interested in finding Krishna, Krishna will find them and he'll reveal himself to them, isn't it? And if they're not interested in finding, then he'll reveal some concept of God, false concept or idea. So it's not that they don't know God or can't know God or are not qualified to know God in so many things. I think it's more of a question of wanting to know God or being attached. I think some people are attached to a God you don't have to surrender to. And so, and some people are attached to a God who's not personal, because if it's a personal relationship, you have to surrender because that person will ask you to do things and that person has desires. So it's nice if God's impersonal, then he can't ask me to do anything because you just surrender and you can, imagine what that looks like. And you can feel you're surrendered, but practically not. So if I don't know who is God, but I want to know, that's a good qualification. Maybe even a safer position than thinking I know when I don't, or being sectarianized. This is the only concept of God. So, not knowing is not a problem. And then, like last night at the Sunday feast, a devotee asked a question. He said, how do you know when you meet a pure devotee? And the speaker gave some answer. I forget the answer, but I also had an answer. And so I went up to him after class and I said, when you're with someone who is pure, you will become pure by being with them. And that's how you know they're pure, right? How do you know fire burns? Get close enough, you'll know. So, how do you know you've got the right conception of God? How do you know? Well, look at your life, look at what your understanding is. One time, Prabhupada gave an interesting answer. I don't know if you know this story. But Prabhupada was on a morning walk, and sometimes on morning walks he would pose questions. He would like debate with devotees as if he were not a devotee. He was an ordinary person. And he would debate with them and he'd throw questions out. And he said, how do you know Krishna's God? And they said, well, Krishna says in the Gita. And Prabhupada said, oh, that's just a book. And they said, well, Prabhupada, you say. He said, well, I could be a cheater. And, they gave all the right answers. It's in the Shastra, they gave the shlokas. The acharyas have said it and so forth. And Prabhupada said, no, it's because you can feel Krishna's presence. That's how you know. So I think there's a lot to be said, not about being naive, but about experience. How do you know this is true? How do you know the mantra works? Do you think we just made up a mantra and we've all become completely disciplined, self-controlled, detached, blissful, and transformed in 100 ways from a made-up mantra? if you do, make up a mantra and, get some people and put them through. You can do a 10-year experiment and get them to chant that mantra every day for 2 hours. Number one, they wouldn't be able to do it with your made up hodgepodge, hoodgepodge, wodge, 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 wodge. That's your mantra. They'll all end up in a mental hospital. They'll die of boredom, isn't it? So you can. So this is often how Prabhupada proved a point. He proved it through his disciples. He said, "Look at them. This works." That's how Prabhupada proved his Gita was bona fide. He said, "Before my Gita, there were 600 plus editions. I don't know how many now. 600 plus editions." And he said, not one person has become a devotee by reading those Gitas. And he said, and now I've written my Gita and there's thousands of devotees. So maybe that means this is the right Gita. You want to hear something funny? I just heard this morning. This is so funny. In India, you go to sell a Bhagavad Gita and they're like, yeah, I have it. And then you go to their house and it's still wrapped up in the plastic wrap. They haven't even taken it out. Yeah. So this devotee said, yeah, they're keeping Bhagavad Gita as it is. They don't touch it. It's just as it is. They put it on the shelf, Bhagavad Gita as it is, untouched. So I thought that was pretty funny. So often Prabhupada would use this as proof for the efficacy of the process of Krishna consciousness. By giving showing the example of his own disciples and how they changed. And I think also we have to recognize that, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, he said, you will get a bona fide guru or you'll get a bogus guru according to what you want, or we could say, according to what you're willing to pay. You can buy your guru on Temu, for $4, but probably isn't going to work so well. And if it does, it's not going to last. Eventually it'll break down. Or, you could go to the store that makes the best gurus and just pay the high price, but it'll last a lifetime. So not everyone wants to pay the price for the real thing. And I think we have to recognize that. And I think also atheism, agnosticism for some people, not for everyone, it's just convenient. Is that way you just don't have to deal with the idea of surrendering to a higher power. So if you can deny him with so-called philosophy or logic or science or however you try to deny him, that insulates you from having to deal with a God. And so that whole aspect of spirituality where you have to surrender to a higher authority, you have to give of yourself, discipline yourself, acknowledge a supreme power beyond humankind. You don't have to deal with that. It's just that's no longer an issue because you've destroyed him, so-called, with your science or philosophy. So I think we need to understand that as well. That's also it's also a reality, subconscious for many. They don't realize it. Why they would turn away from spirituality. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I answered a question. Was that what you're asking? You're specifically asking something else that I didn't understand.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you for your answer. Yes, specifically, I was trying to understand one going back to God. Is it the mood of which one is approaching God, or how much one has realized God, or how philosophically that one may be before one can actually go back to God?
When you have love for Krishna, then you understand everything about Krishna. Bhakti mama vijananti. I can only be known by bhakti. But when you have love, you don't care to know about Krishna. You just want to love him. And the it's such a paradox. You need to know God to love him, but when you love him, knowing him gets in the way of your love. Because knowing his power and grandeur is like, no, I don't. Do you know how great God is? I don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't know. Is Krishna God? I don't know. He's my friend. Doesn't matter. That's like higher levels of Braj Bhakti, right? So it's kind of funny. We say you need knowledge, but then we say at a higher level, knowledge just gets in the way. You need love. And of course, the example that's given over and over again is the gopis' love for Krishna was not based on their knowledge. Although it's funny to say that because so many of them came back again as the greatest scholars in the world, maybe in the universe. But they play the part of village girls who were not, raised in Gurukul knowing Shastra. Although if you read their prayers in Bhagavatam, the Sanskrit and the prayers, it's like, how could you do that if you didn't know? But anyway, that's the role that Prabhupada and our acharyas give them. So no, we want love. It's not like through austerity alone you'll get back to God, and it's not through knowledge alone. But those things are meant to support you in developing your love. But if after all the austerities and the knowledge you don't develop love, then, what's the point? You went to the gym for 10 years, you're still fat. Like, you still have no muscles. Like, what were you doing at the gym? Sleeping? I don't know. So, talking to your friends and eating cookies. So, love is the goal. That's what we're interested in. And when you're asking the question, I was thinking of the four Kumaras who were trying to get into Vaikuntha as impersonalists, and they couldn't get in because impersonalists don't go to Vaikuntha. And so Jai and Vijay rightly prevented them from coming in. They were upset. They thought they had a right to come in. But each gate is, you have to get through 7 gates. And I believe the last gate is bhakti. Like, there's different things that each gate represents: detachment, freedom from enviousness, or whatever they represent, I forget. But the Kumars made it through all those gates, but they didn't make it through the last, so that's the bhakti gate, and they weren't devotees. So I think that's really answers your question, doesn't it? The Kumars made it through 6, but not the 7th. And it wasn't because of the impropriety of Jai and Vijay. Jai and Vijay actually did their job. It's because they weren't qualified until they became devotees. So
All right. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
For devotees, like, what's the good of knowledge if it doesn't develop love?
There are 2 questions in the chat room, but before we go to them,
Okay.
I have one humble request, and I would like to put it on the screen.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not an English person. English is my second language. But I think there is either a typo or error, whichever we may call it. This is Canto 3, Chapter 7 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the title is Further Inquiries by Vidura, which I believe is an error, it's a mistake. I think it should be Further Inquiries by Vidura. And if you think...
You mean there should be an I there? Inquiries.
Yeah, I think there should be an I between the R and the E. And if you think that should be the right word, if you can help, get in touch with the database.
Oh, yeah. It should be Vidura Further Inquires, or Further Inquiries by Vidura.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not an editor, but Chaitanya Dasi, can you look up the word inquires and see if it could work in this scenario. If not, I could send it to Dravida, let him know. He may already know. He may already know, and he may have corrected it already. Who knows?
But Chaitanya Devi, I think you were asked a question and I saw you shaking your head. You may unmute.
Hare Krishna, thank you. No, I was just signaling about this inquiries question. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. Yeah. When I saw it, it caught my eyes, and I thought, I think this must be, if it's just further inquires by Vidura, then there should be further inquiries, because Vidura is inquiring from.
But then there's no verb in the sentence. Then there'll be no verb, because inquires is the verb. Further inquiries by Vidura. Then it's a sentence without a verb. Because inquiries is a noun, right?
Yeah.
So Vidura further inquires would be maybe a proper sentence. I guess it's a title, so maybe it doesn't need a verb. Anyway, I can write Dravida. He can figure it out.
Yeah.
No.
Just like you said, I believe if it's like Vidura further inquires, then that should be all right.
Yeah.
But that is not how it appears here.
Okay.
All right. So we can leave that, and then we go back to the chat room and take the questions. First question is, yes. First question is from Hari Bhakti Prabhu. And the question is, Hare Krishna, all right. What should devotees be aware of regarding subtle impersonal influences that are
Hear about Krishna and you think that's impossible. That could be a tinge of impersonalism, possibly. I think impersonalism can also be, as Prabhupada said, our impersonalism towards Krishna can be a reflection of our impersonalism in this world, that we've been so badly hurt in relationships, we don't want them. And that can affect our relationship with Krishna. If I get too close to him and it's too personal and intimate, I'll suffer, because that's what's happened to me already in the material world. So, it's difficult for me to answer this question because I never had a problem, not that I was aware of, with impersonal ideas. But I think, in answer to your question, every one of us could just look and think in ways that we may relate impersonally to Krishna, not necessarily Mayavad, but avoiding a more personal relationship with him, and preference to something more awe and reverential or impersonal because it requires less personal examination of the relationship. Who am I showing up as for Krishna? So in any subtle way, you are like trying to minimize the personal relationship. You could say it's an impersonal influence. It may or may not be, but it may be a reflection of your own problems in this world, of just wanting to be alone. You like to be alone, not bothered. One thing we could say is, do deity worship because it's personal. And that can help a lot. It's hard, in the Hare Krishna movement, it's pretty difficult to be an impersonalist since we have deities everywhere. And that's a central part of our focus. But of course, you can forget the holy name is Krishna. That's impersonal, right? Just chanting. It's Krishna's name, but you're just chanting it like it's not his name. It's just a sound. So that's there. You can have deities at home and kind of just wake them up and, wake them up as fast as you can, with your mantras. And get it done and wash your altar. Like, I gotta go to work. See you later, Krishna. So you could deal with it that way. That would be an aspect of it. I think you should go down the list yourself and think about it. I think we all should. Was it? There's two aspects of impersonalism that I can see. One is philosophical and one is relational. And I was talking more about the relational aspects. Because you may think philosophically, I'm not an impersonalist, so therefore I'm not impersonal. But practically, in how you deal with Krishna, you might be, or how you deal with devotees, you might be. Impersonal, not in the sense of becoming one with Krishna, but in the sense of avoiding aspects of the relationship. I think that bad chanting is really an indication of that. If I have a bad relationship with you, I don't even want to like talk about it because it's like yuck. So I think sometimes we may chant poorly because we have such a bad relation with the holy name. We don't even want to think about how bad it is. And just get my rounds done. Because otherwise it's like so depressing. And, I look and I'm so impersonal in my relationship, whatever. Could be, but these are all things for you to reflect on. I can't say for sure how you all feel, but there's just things to look at. But Krishna is personally present in the deity, is personally present in his holy name. So, Hare Krishna.
Right. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So we go to Fabiano Nova Rocha. He says, Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances.
Sounds like Fabiana. Your name sounds like a flavor of ice cream. Nova Rocha. I'll take a Nova Rocha, some walnuts.
So,
like mocha, mocha. New mocha, new rocha. Okay.
So she says, how should we react when we hear impersonalist talk? Like we obviously are not Prabhupada, and because of it, maybe we can just start kirtan or be impersonalist philosophy.
Yeah.
So how should we react so we don't commit offenses?
Well, if you're locked in a room with them and they're all speaking crazy philosophy, find the key to the door and get out. Unless you're a martial artist and you can destroy them all. But, as you're saying, that's not really appropriate. That's not our philosophy. And of course, if these impersonalists have some good qualities and they're austere and so forth, you can appreciate that from a distance. Like, they're sadhus in some sense. I can tell you what I've found works. Sometimes I get them to explain their philosophy and then I explain it back because I want to explain the limitations of it, but I want to acknowledge that I've understood it, and they acknowledge, yes, that's what I believe. And then I would say something like, what you just explained to me is only the first step of God realization. To realize that I'm a spiritual being and realize my oneness with God. But there are higher steps. There are higher levels of realization. So this is just level 1. Level 2 is realizing God within the heart, and level 3 is the personal form. So, would you be interested in going to a higher level? And sometimes they'd never heard that before, and they're like, so the natural human response is, yeah, well, if it's higher, better. I would, You're at the store buying a camera for $500, and I come up to you and say, you see this camera over here? Yesterday it was $2,000, and today it's $500, and it's at least 3 times better than the one you're looking at. So you're going to buy the better one. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, same price. So it's something, it's kind of what you're doing, you see. For the same price, you can get to level 1. Would you like to get to level 1? What do you think? You want me to tell you about what is level 1? So I found that works in enticement. The reason also, well, something also to understand is that the traditional Mayavadi that Prabhupada talks about and the so-called Mayavadis in the West, you know, the hippies and the spiritual seekers and like that, the yogis, they're different. Often the Westerners are just, that's just what they learned. They didn't learn anything else. It's all they know. And they're repeating what they learned. And I don't even think in many cases they understand the depth of what that means. But, you know, hardcore Mayavadis, yeah, they're hardcore. They know what they mean. And it may be impossible and a waste of time to interact with them. And it wouldn't be productive. And you might even get contaminated by listening to them. So that's also a consideration. Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoy Sarvanash. By hearing Mayavad commentary, your mind becomes polluted. Even the mind of a great devotee can become polluted. I'm God. Wow, that's so attractive. So, but with yoga people like that, you know, my technique can be quite effective. You know, that's, you know, they say, I've doing this, and you go, that's good. Did you know that's just the first stage? There's 2 more stages in the yoga practice. You know, they'll probably say, no, I didn't know. I say, yeah, this is stage 1, you know. Now you go to the next stage. You can go right to stage 3 if you want. That's bhakti. And another thing, and you can just take this on board. I don't know if this will help people or not, but I find it extremely interesting that if you go online, there are so many podcasts about relationships. Like, it's such a buzz, you know, relationships, because relationships are difficult. It's called Yuga. They're even more difficult. And so, you know, we have to talk about how to have good relationships. And so there's a lot of talk. And in the midst of all that talk and interest in relationships, the very people who are interested in having good relationships, they don't want a relationship with a personal God. Like, that doesn't make sense. So you can say, just like in your life, you want good relationships, and then you come to spiritual life and you say, I don't want any relationship. No, this is the highest, the best relationship. It doesn't make sense. It's just a stage. That's a level, but it's not the culmination. And it doesn't vibe with our experience in this world. And sometimes I'll do this. It sounds sarcastic, but someone will say, you know, I don't believe God's a person and we're all one with God. And I'll just say, have you had trouble with relationships in your life? And a lot of times they'll say, yeah. And I say, I think that's why you're saying that. There's not trouble with that relationship with the Supreme. But if you've had trouble with relationships in this world, you'll project that on him. That all relationships are troublesome. So Prabhupada does mention that in the Bhagavad Gita. That sometimes impersonalism is a projection of bad experience in relationships. So I've done that before, and it's amazing. And the person said, yeah, I have. And I said, then I said, maybe those experiences are pushing you towards a more impersonal, desiring a more impersonal understanding of God. Interesting, isn't it? Yes?
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Actually, Richard Davey asked my first question, so I will not go back to that question because
Okay.
it said that one should not imitate the spiritual master. We should try to follow. So we cannot imitate what Sri Prabhupada did.
Yeah.
So thank you for the answer. And Prabhuji, I still have I would say it's more of a request, a humble request than a question. And I'm putting this request before you because I believe that one of the several unique qualities you have is the ability to explain even the most complex topic in such a way that even babies can understand it.
Even what? Even babies can understand it?
Yes, I've been listening to you so many times, fortunately for myself. And it's always amazing and interesting how you are able to break down subject matters for people to understand. And
You know, I've heard something like somebody say something, maybe you know better, some of you. If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't really understand it. Did somebody say that? Or is that,
yes,
like,
Bob Marley said that.
yeah.
Yeah, Bob Marley said that.
I,
And
yeah,
yeah,
I find that's the most complicated thing is to make it simple.
yeah, but somehow you make it. Just like before Sri Prabhupada came to the West, so many people had come, but they could not explain
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness to the process. So yes, doing so wonderfully that maybe not here at this particular time, but maybe at some point you may speak on certain terminologies we have in movement that we use, and sometimes we may not use them appropriately. There was a time His Holiness Kabichandra Swami Maharaj was in Ghana, and his first disciple he had initiated, Ekanath, was addressing him, and he addressed him as Prabhu. And Kabichandra Maharaj immediately corrected him, says, "Do not address me as Prabhu. I am your Guru. Address me as Gurudev or Maharaj." So I have seen so many times in our movement where we use different terminologies for different people. And I think there are these terminologies for a purpose. In other words, simply because I belong to the Catholic, I will not be addressed as father. I will not be addressed as bishop. I will not be addressed as archbishop. So if sometime you get the opportunity to speak on these topics, if you may explain to the world who is addressed as Gurudev, who is addressed as Guru Maharaj, who is addressed as Prabhu, who is addressed as Swamiji, who is addressed as His Holiness, who is addressed as His Grace. I think lots of devotees may benefit from it. And as insignificant as most of us may see ourselves today, in 200-300 years to come, people are going to look at what we did, what we said, and use that as, okay, this was the standard then. So this is my humble request. Hare Krishna.
You know the joke? We in America, when you try to remember someone, you say, "What's his face?" You know, you can't remember his name. So with devotees, it's "What's his grace?" Yeah. What's his grace? What's his grace name? I can't remember. Yeah. I want to. Can I at least address your first point?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, please.
Sometimes when we speak, we want to speak about things which are of interest to us. And if we have the capacity to go very deep, shastrically or philosophically, we may, because we have that capacity and we like to do it, we may go over people's heads. You know, we just because, we're older devotees and that's what, motivates us and inspires us. So if you listen to Prabhupada's earliest lectures, they were probably the most elevated of all his 12 years of lectures. Did you know that? Because, you know, he's coming out of India kind of like on his level. And then, you know, soon he saw that, oh, that didn't work. And then sometimes devotees will say, you know, Prabhupada's lectures are simple. Well, not those early ones, but he, you know, he saw what the capacity was. And I think this is just how I feel, and I think this is how Prabhupada felt, that when you have a medicine that's going to cure somebody, and the medicine tastes terrible, you figure out how to get it down. You put it in, you know, put it on a spoon with some honey or some cherry syrup, or, hey, did you see that plane? You know, you pop it in the mouth, you know, hit them on the back, and they go, oh, and it goes down. You know, you somehow you get it in there because your desire to heal them is so strong. So I think in the simplicity of Prabhupada's explanations, or if you say that I'm simple, I think there is a motive like this. Philosophy is very important, and you need to understand it clearly, and it's so easy to misunderstand it. So let us explain it in a way that's easy to understand and difficult to misunderstand so that we get the medicine down. I think that's the motive. And let's not entertain ourselves when we're speaking, but let's direct it to where people are at and what they need rather than what will inspire me. Now, I could give some special classes on some topic that's very inspiring me, but as inspiring for me, and maybe everyone wouldn't understand the depth of it. That can be an exception, but in general. And that's hard to do. I've seen very elevated devotees give lectures that I don't think most of the lecture the audience didn't understand, because the audience was, a lot of it weren't even devotees or congregation, newer people. So, and I think because I teach so many courses and I'm a lot of times taking concepts which are like, I feel difficult to understand. And I think, how are we going to understand this? This is really, it's very subtle. You wouldn't understand this unless you've been a devotee a long time. So how can I express that so you can get the essence of it without having to chant 100 rounds a day for the next 30 years? At least that's my motive, you know. I think that's the job of a teacher. Take a elevator speech. Tell me what Krishna consciousness is in the time it takes to go. You know, that's hard. It's easy. Give me 2 hours. That's easier.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji. There is a beautiful
Yes,
question.
Your Grace Sahadev. You're welcome, Your Grace Sahadev. You are a Sahadev. You are a grace and a Prabhu.
Yeah, I think I am that.
His Grace Sahadev Prabhu.
There is a question from Tinko Prabhu, and his question, please, I just said Tinko Prabhu, I'm not sure if it's a lady or a guy. Okay, all right, please. So forgive me if I mistake. Hare Krishna, dear Gurudev, I have a friend. She's elder devotee. She's very sincere, devoted, serving to the deities, devotees, preaching, chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regulative principles. But she's constantly saying that she is not going to return back to Godhead because of too many material attachments, etc. And Tinku says he's trying to inspire this devotee in various ways. So what do you suggest he does to help this wonderful devotee?
Yeah, maybe you could tell her and say, if, you know, the end of your life when Krishna comes, and he's going to say, well, you have 2 choices. Me or your attachments? You think you'll give up those attachments? Of course you'll say yes. Say, so you have, your life's not over yet. And, as you get closer to meeting Krishna, it's going to be naturally easier. And in the presence of Krishna, we can give up anything. I mean, think of all the things you're attached to, and imagine Krishna came over, like when Krishna said, "Can I have your car?" You're not going to say, "No, it's my car. I like that car. You could get any car you want. Why do you have to take my car?" We wouldn't say that. Say, take it. Can I have your house? Take it. We, because love overwhelms us and we want to give with love. So I have, Tinako, I have seen or I have heard both stories of devotees in their last weeks and months of their life that very transformed, like amazingly transformed. So, it's like those races, Olympic races, and all of a sudden, like the last 20, 30 seconds, someone from Nigeria comes from the back, one of those super Nigerian runners, or, who've been running like 50 miles a day, since they were 3 years old. And they come out of nowhere. They were just like cruising, and they come out of nowhere and they pass everybody, and everyone's shocked. And all the other runners are like, they're out of breath. They can't keep up. It's something like that. You don't know how much mercy you will get from Krishna. And my sense, Tinako, is that devotee is not attached. If you're very, very advanced, then any speck of attachment you'll magnify and you'll say, "I'm so attached." You're like, "Oh, I ate 3 chapatis. I should have only eaten 2. I'm so attached. I slept 6 hours and 15 minutes. I should have slept 5 hours and 45 minutes. I'm so attached to my soft bed." With minus 50 outside and I put the heat on. I'm so attached to my body. Like some devotees are so advanced that any little like comfort they'll create for themselves. They'll interpret that as a deep attachment. So maybe this lady is a bit like that. I think possibly could be. I get that feeling, but you would know better than I do. But sometimes it's like that, So if you agree with that, Tinako, you could say, Mataji, I wish I was as attached, so-called attached as you are, because you're like a million times more detached than practically all the devotees. She probably is, right?
Right.
Yeah. And you can say, Mataji, it's all like a devotee says, "I'm not humble." "Prabhu, I'm not humble." And I say, only a humble person would say that. I catch them, You know what I mean? So it's only because you are detached that you think you're attached. It's like Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was lamenting once, and he was saying, "I have no love for Krishna," because anyone who has love for Krishna could not maintain their body in separation. And look at me, 48 years I'm living in this world, or however old he was at that time, in separation from Krishna. This is proof I don't have love, because I couldn't, if you love Krishna, you couldn't live. So, but that's proof that he does have love, that he feels like that. The proof that I have love is I feel like I don't have it. That's the proof. I don't have any love for Krishna. You've just proved that you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said that. Of course, sometimes it's true. We don't have any love. But on advanced levels, for advanced devotees, when they say these things, they're autobiographical. They're saying I'm attached, but they're not. And another thing I think is important to recognize, which can help us. Prabhupada came to get us back to Godhead. And if he has to take us through a needle hole, like who's going to fit through that hole? No, we're all too big to get through the eye of a needle. So Prabhupada's making adjustments for us, You know, I can't go back to God. How come? Well, because this salad dressing, you know, I'm attached to this salad dressing. I don't know. You know, it's like when you're at the end of your life after practicing Krishna consciousness your whole life, you really think there's something in this world in that decrepit body you want to stick around for? Probably not. You know, that's my joke. You know, it's like when something really good happens, you know, and you can ask yourself, you know, this was good, but is this worth taking another body to do this again? You know what I mean? Like you go on a vacation and to go swimming in the waterfalls or whatever you do, go to this beautiful beach and you know, have a great time. And then I'll say, and you'll tell me we had a great time and say, well, is it worth coming back again so you could do it again? And no matter how great it was, you'd probably say, no, I don't think so. Isn't it? So it's not that you're not attached. Yeah, I'd like to do it again. But since you put in that context, is it worth coming back for that? No, not. It's not that great, you know. Right?
Hare Krishna. Govinda, probably have something to ask, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Maharaj, please, I would like you to um, help me to understand or clear this conception of uh, addressing the gurus, the sannyasis properly. You know, we understand that the guru is one. The guru may be 10, but they are one. They are one because they are all representing Krishna. And so they are one in that sense. But at the same time, we have two types of gurus in our movements. I say we have two types because there are gurus who started from the brahmacharis, became a sannyasi, and now became initiated gurus. And these gurus are addressed as Maharajas. And there are gurus who were also brahmacharis, became grihasthas, and now they are also attended, so they are also gurus, and they are addressed as vanacharis. Sometimes the disciple may call his vanachari guru. Is there an offense? Is there anything wrong for a disciple or a vanachari to be called Maharaj? Is it wrong to address a vanachari as Maharaj?
Well, when Prabhupada was asked a similar question about how to call your guru, he said, you can call him Guru Dev or you can call him Guru Maharaj. So now you're calling Guru Maharaj to a Vanachari, or to speak of a fallen Grihastha, who are sometimes called Maharaj or Guru Maharaj. But that's what Prabhupada said. So unless some point in time it is determined that's improper and the GBC prevents it, I think we can assume that for the disciple, yeah. I mean, it's a different, you know, there's another part to your question which would be, what about people in general calling a guru, Guru Dev, Guru Maharaj, or Maharaj? Because if that person is not their guru, then calling them, it's like calling someone daddy. Well, I'm not your father. Why are you calling me daddy? You know. But for the children to call him daddy, well, that's natural, right? So to me, Govinda, the question is more not how the disciples address their guru, because those are, that's common, Gurudev, Guru Maharaj. But how the public addresses him. And then the other thing is that you'll notice that some gurus do not want their disciples to address them as Gurudev or Guru Maharaj in public, because then it's like you're either in or out. You're not. And it's like, well, someone calls me Gurudev, then Sadhudev's like, well, what do I call him? He's not my guru. Or is maybe I kind of seem like a 6-year guru, so should it's confusing. So that's something that I've tried but failed to do with my disciples. So if they don't call me Gurudev, they would call me Maharaj, because I think they feel awkward calling me Prabhu, because everyone's a Prabhu. And if you call me Prabhu, then I'm just like all the other Prabhus, although Prabhu is a glorious title. And some, of my disciples do that. They don't maybe know the etiquette or whatever. I don't. I'm not such an etiquette-oriented person, because I see more of the desire in heart. But I think it's awkward a little bit. Although, a lot of disciples will address their spiritual master in public as Guru Maharaj, Gurudev. It's so common. But it's at least something to consider, that it might be a little awkward for other people. And they could address them as Maharaj or something of that nature. Although some people feel that's pretty awkward to address a Grihastha as Maharaj. But it's difficult to control how people address you, isn't it? Either nicely or not nicely.
Mm. Yes.
You get both in your life, and you can't always control it.
Well, thank you. I have one quick question. I say
Okay.
quick question, but it's not very quick. You addressed this so beautifully. The pranams of Srila Prabhupada and Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. Srila Prabhupada was so much against voidism and impersonalism, and like you rightly said, any opportunity he gets, he will try to address that.
Yes.
So he did that with this particular verse. Now we are so fortunate, we understand that the personalism of the Godhead is superior to impersonalism. And we are given the opportunity to access the personal features of the Lord.
Yes.
There are others, like Govinda Prabhu asked earlier on, who are also sincerely serving God, but they serve God in an impersonal way. However,
The servants of God in what way?
in an impersonal way, impersonal.
Oh,
However,
okay.
these people who serve God in an impersonal way seem to be more personal in dealings amongst themselves than those of us who serve God personally and oftentimes end up dealing with our God family in a very impersonal way. I was invited by a Jehovah's Witness friend to their kingdom one time in my country. And there were like about 120 congregants. About 3/4 of them came and shook hands with me after the sermon. I had the same experience in the US also. A Jehovah's Witness friend invited me to their kingdom. And almost 3/4 of the congregation came and shook hands with me. When it comes to personal relationship, I feel we as devotees are very much deficient. So, what do you suggest we could try to do to try to improve on our relationship in a personal way?
Mhm. How many hours do you have left for the answer?
Well, as long as
I could only say that that's a question for reflection for each devotee.
good.
I think part of the answer to that question would be for each of us to ask, were we like that before devotees? Did we become that way as devotees? Because if we weren't like that and we became that way, then the next question is, what happened? Right? And if we were that way, then it's like, okay, that's just how I am. You know, I'm self-centered and I like to be alone and I don't like people bothering me, whatever. And then I can deal with that and understand the benefit of it and the detriments of it within the sangha of devotees, how that can be good and bad. Sometimes we need to be alone, and sometimes we need not to be. And we as devotees would have to observe how and in what ways our actions may be impersonal. Like, you know, I can't remember your name. What was that devotee from Nigeria that does these classes? What's his name? Something with an S, you know, like that. So if we're more personal, then I think we'll remember more names. If we're more personal, we'll remember more of the commitments we made to other people. Oh yeah, I told you I would do this and I forgot, right? So things like that. These are reflections I have. Like if I forget names, it's like, why did I forget that name? It's like, that's impersonal. I mean, maybe also called old age, I don't know. But I think we tend to remember what's important to us, don't we? I have $1 million. I forgot where I put it. Now that's not going to happen. So where did I put it? Was it in my drawer? Was it under my bed, in my mattress? Where is it? Is it in the bank? You would never think like that. So I think the more important relationships are for us, the more we give to those relationships and give to those people, remember them, be concerned about them, help them. And it's possible also that when we become devotees, we add like 2, 3, 4 hours to our day that we had before, 2 hours of chant japa, hour to read, you know. Maybe we might sleep a little less. But let's say there's another like at least minimum 2 hours, right? And then we have to do more cooking because we can't just go to the store and buy everything. So that could have some effect on the impersonal, perhaps, that we're like so busy just trying to, I can't think about other people because I can hardly wash my dishes, I got 4 weeks of dishes in the sink. I can't find 15 minutes to do it. You ever feel like that? And like sometimes I'll get so busy and so many things going on that I'll hit a threshold and I can't accommodate. Someone said, I'm about ready to commit suicide. I'm on the bridge. I'm about to jump off. And I'm like, can you get back to me next week? I'm really busy right now. I can't handle anything else. Sometimes I feel like, not that I would do that, but sometimes I feel like that. So I think that could be part of it. It's just a little bit of the overwhelm. And so we have 2, 3 hours more of sadhana, and then we want to do service. So we've added like all kinds of time to our schedule where we could have been relaxing and chilling and whatever. So I think that may add to it. we gave a workshop on vows, and I said, it's nice to think of all the people you promised you would do things that you didn't do. That's just a little wake-up call, if you want to reflect on that. And everybody thought of things that they said they were supposed to do that they didn't do. So it was like an uh-oh moment. Uh-oh, I didn't do that. Uh-oh, I never paid him back. Uh-oh, I forgot his birthday. You know, it's like, so I think it's just being a bit more conscious also.
Well, thank you so much.
Can I go?
have to
Can
bring
I
this
go
to a
now?
Close, but Shimabara Acharya, I believe this must be the last question, so that probably they can leave for
Yeah.
other engagements. Shimabara Acharya, Prabhu, please give me unmute.
Jai, please accept my humble obeisances, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. This is not much of a question, like an appreciation. Thank you very much, Mahatma Prabhu. We are very much gladdened to see you back and getting more recovered in your health and having more of your association.
Thank you.
We love hearing you. And
Thank you.
seeing you back in good health is very enlightening to us. So thank you very much for
Hare Krishna.
your
Jai
presence
Prabhupada.
here. Hare
Jai
Krishna. And thank you for the discourses. Very enlightening. Hare Krishna.
You are welcome.
Hare
Jai
Krishna.
Prabhupada.
So,
Gauranga. Okay, everyone. This is a
yes.
new world's record. We only went 1 hour and 35 minutes.
Yes. So the word is, we humbly apologize if anyone had questions, comments, realizations, or they wanted to share us. We may not be able to take any further questions. And we hope to meet with you again in the very near future.
Okay.
And with that, we're going to humbly request all the assembled Vaishnavi devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Mahatma Prabhu. Jai. Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
Mahatma Prabhu ki jai.
Gauranga.
Iskcon Africa Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Oh,
Srimad Bhagavatam
Hari Hari Vishnu.
Jai.
Kongo. Nityananda.